Welcome to Life on the Rock. Tonight our guest is pure in heart. We have Fernando Limbo, the executive director, and Nicole Rudolph. This is an organization that promotes chastity among our youth. It's part of the new evangelization, talking about the sanctity of life. They're doing great work up in Boston, in that area, speaking to our young people. It's a young adults ministry that has a great fellowship and prayer life, and they go out on mission to spread the church's message on purity. So we're excited to have them on.
Yeah.
Doug,
Father,
good to see you.
You too.
Doug, you know, I read something recently that encouraged me that I somehow missed. Yeah, in the Synod, way back in October, remember, the opening remarks was by a Hungarian Cardinal Erdo, and he made this, I think his role was to make this presentation of the Instrumentum Laboris, this working document that the Synod Fathers were supposed to use. And he presented a very, you know, because a lot of us were concerned about what was being discussed here and what was you know, presented as possibilities. And he gave a very, I would call like a traditional view of teachings. One thing I loved is he cited CDF statements and Pontifical Council for the Laity, Familiaris Consortio, the John Paul's document for the family. It's teaching on communion to the divorced and remarried. You know, it really situated this in the context or the pretext or whatever of tradition. You know, what have we said about these issues before? And he said something beautifully in the talk too about the vocation to marriage. It's a path to holiness, to sanctity for the Christian. And he says, Jesus' teaching on marriage and family are from creation. The life of the human being and of humanity is part of a great project, that of God the Creator. As in all aspects of life, we find our wholeness and felicity if we can insert ourselves freely and consciously into this great project full of wisdom and love. If we seek the truth about marriage and family according to the best of our natural capacities, and if we listen to the teachings of Jesus Christ, then we grasp in all its fullness and all its holiness, so resplendent are marriage and family in their beauty, that St. Paul said that this is a great mystery which manifests the love of Christ for the church. So for the Christian, it's a sacrament. So it's caught up in that love that Jesus has for his bride, the church. So I thought that was beautiful to speak of it in terms of a vocation. It's a natural reality from, you know, from creation, and then the church has taken it up, made it a sacrament, an image of Christ in the church. It's caught up in Trinitarian love. It manifests that, manifests the image of God, the original couple together. So he says real beautiful things, and he speaks about the indissolubility is just a fundamental aspect of this. And it's not a yoke to drag us. It's a gift. It's a gift that leads us to fulfillment, to be indissoluble, meaning that we're committed to each other for life. You cannot pull it asunder. And for the difficult cases of marriages that have failed, the reason you cannot, he says in here, cannot be admitted to communion is not because that marriage failed. It's because you're entered into a, you know, a divorced remarried situation, into this new union that's not permitted, you know, outside of the church. And so I think that was a great distinction to make. It's not because the marriage fails, it's because you're remarried outside of the church. So. And
the response when he said all this, when he read this, was what?
From what I heard, they applauded him in the hall. Cardinal Casper didn't, they said, but they said he got this general applause.
Imagine that, yeah.
But I thought it was encouraging for us who are worried about you know, things being discussed, that this was the opening presentation of the Synod.
Right.
And the thing that's always kind of bothered me about it too is that we've had CDF statements, we've had synodal statements, you know, by John Paul, post-synodal address, Familiaris Consortio, on this issue.
And the CDF is, for the audience, the Council of...
Congregation for Doctrine of Faith.
No, something else, yeah. Congregation of Doctrine of Faith,
right.
So they understand that there is an actual you know, branch, if you will, of the Vatican that looks at these things carefully, protects them, speaks clearly on them, and this has been in our history for long time, and is not going to be forgotten.
Right.
But I think you make a good point. You know that it's a positive voice. It's an encouraging voice because we don't seem to hear a lot of that. The press the mainstream press, secular press likes to jump all over certain things and run with them. Yeah. That becomes more of a, you know, if it bleeds, it leads type of story. If it's exciting and scandalous and so forth, controversial. Whereas this is a voice, this man, this cardinal who who just reiterates what the church teaches.
Right, very solidly, and it just proclaiming the gospel in its fullness. And yeah, it's challenging, and yeah, it demands repentance. We all have to repent and believe in the gospel. It demands conversion. And we're in a year for mercy that is an invitation to all, but there's a mercy that entails that, yes, come. It's a work of God's grace that we can repent, that we can be converted, but it presupposes, a goodwill in us that we're seeking the Lord.
Right.
And that I got to change. We all have to change.
Right.
Mark's gospel begins with repent and believe in the gospel. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. So that demands a change in my life.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why come into the church? Why believe it? If it's nothing different than the world, if I want something more. That's what drew me to a deeper relationship with God, is that He's offering something more than the world gives.
Yeah,
So-
and the challenge is great. It's a great challenge, but there's no growth without challenge. There's no strength without struggle.
Right.
And God is constantly giving us those challenges to act upon the change. And change is an act of the will. I mean, it has to come from within us. It's something that can't be forced upon us. It's the one thing that God will never do is force our will. And there's something powerful about that and loving about that. But it also puts an awful lot on us to have to respond, if we do want to have that.
That's a path to fullness, as you can say, in fidelity to your marriage, that's a truly fulfilling, joyful way. If we live this teaching of the gospel, it's a path to a fullness in life.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
No, it isn't. And the idea of true joy comes from that. The deep joy of as Father John Hardin would have said, joy or happiness is a fulfillment of a desire. But if it's earthly, it's temporary. It fades. Your team wins, the game ends. Okay, the joy's over pretty much because the game is over. Music ends, the dance beat and all stops, the joy is over. But the eternal joy that we're looking for, and that's what something like marriage, the power of marriage does, is it brings us to something that is an eternal joy. And you experience it here, knowing that there's something even greater later. Greater later. Hey, that rhymed.
All right. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with Pure in Heart. So don't go away. Back in a moment. Welcome back. We have Pure in Heart with us tonight, Fernando, Limbo, and Nicole Rudolph. Fernando, welcome.
Father, it's a pleasure.
Nicole, Pure of Heart in America. You're in Boston,
Yes.
in a modern city. Tell us about your organization and give us a thumbnail sketch of it.
Sure. So we were incorporated in 2009. Our origins actually come from Ireland. So I think it was around the mid-90s. A group of young adults had gone to see the Pope and had felt very compelled to start an organization of which young adults could come together and talk about purity, and not only just to be able to share this message amongst themselves and with other young adults, but also with their youth in their local area. And so, skip a decade later, that message had since then moved to Boston. And we've been fortunate enough to have really amazing leadership to really set a solid foundation for us. So that not only have we have our group in Boston, but we also have a group out in Worcester, Massachusetts, as well as a group in Lowell, Massachusetts. And so, there have been many graces that have come, but just as part of our young adult ministry, we begin our evenings with Mass, followed by Rosary, Confession, Eucharistic Adoration, and then we do a small talk and discussion and fellowship following. And this is pretty consistent across all our three groups. And a part of that ministry is our apostolate is to go out and give talks to different religious education programs, confirmation groups on chastity, the sanctity of life, and faith and media.
And we should say your location in Boston, you're at St. Clement's Eucharistic shrine.
Yes.
And I think, can you see the domes of MIT from
Yes.
across? So you're just down the street from MIT, across the river, the Charles River.
Yes.
So you're in this really intellectual environment. You got Harvard and Boston College, Boston University.
Boston University, Boston College, Northeastern. I mean, the Fenway colleges. I mean, we're very blessed in that. And we've been very fortunate because a lot of our leadership, a lot of our members come from these institutions, both as current students or even as young professionals after college.
Yeah.
I myself had attended Boston University, and so that's how I ended up there.
Yeah.
Nicole was working in Boston. That's how she came across Pure in Heart America.
And can't you see the baseball park? Is it Fenway Park?
Fenway Park,
You
right
can
down
see
the
it.
street from St. Clements.
So yeah, so you're like in the heart of a great kind of evangelization location. Boston's got, I think, more universities per capita than anybody else in the country. So it's a thriving place for young people, a lot of activity. And could you tell us, Nicole, something, what intrigued me about the group too, I love these groups that are simple, adoration, mass, the fellowship. Tell us about that discussion group part of it. I know y'all you'll have a speaker usually, have a discussion. Tell us about that aspect.
Yeah, it's really powerful in faith formation, and it's very encouraging. So we have normally just young professionals, Catholic, oftentimes members of our own group, who give the talks, and they're about 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and it could be on any subject, so anything from theology of the body or something more applicable to how to live your life in faith, to the life of a saint, to what's going on in the calendar of the church. And sometimes we have thematic movements, sometimes we have people come in and discuss their vocational stories,
Right.
which is really nice.
And you've had a number of seminarians come out of the group, is that right?
Yes,
Yes.
we have a lot of vocations.
Yeah.
Sisters of Life, St. John Seminary
Yeah.
for the Diocese of Boston. A lot of marriages, a lot of babies.
Oh, wow.
So it's been very fruitful.
Yeah. And you made a point too for us to understand that you're part of the new evangelization, that it's not just about yourselves. You all are going out to talk to the confirmation groups. And can you tell us a little bit about that spirituality? Why the need to go out?
Well, I think there is a need there. I personally was really impacted by a chastity talk that I heard when I was in 9th grade in my parish in Pennsylvania, and it really impacted me for the rest of my life, and it really marked my faith also. And then the theology of the body also was very instrumental in my faith journey. And so I just feel like that's such a wonderful gift to give back. And so it's majority just, again, students and young professionals, and we're trained to go out and give talks on 3 different subjects.
Yeah.
So faith in media, the sanctity of life, and also chastity. And I just think for the students, the feedback is so positive, and to have that witness coming from young adults who are actively striving to live a life according to, and joyfully according to what the church teaches, it's been very helpful.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the heart of it, the message of purity. Christianity, this is just part of our bread and butter. This is like the heart of the gospel message, to have this pure heart that we're told in the Beatitudes will see God, if we have this pure heart. What is the message you tell young people about purity of heart?
So I like to think in images, and probably one of the best images that I think we have just within our presentations that we give young people is we have 2 images. One image of clear blue water, and one image of water that has a lot of muck in it, a lot of trash, and that kind of representative of what life or society can say what love is. And we say to them, if you were to take a cup of each, and if you were to have a loved one come to your home, which cup of water would you offer to them? And obviously, the answer would be giving them that clear, cup of blue water. And why? I mean, because you want to give them the best. And so that whole idea of pure in heart is continually, at least from my personal understanding of it, is to continue to give the best version of ourselves to the ones that we care about, and I mean to our brothers and sisters.
And Nicole, you had a succinct way of putting it too, is just that the life of God increases in us. It's about Him increasing in us. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I think there's something to that You know, when they even say grace builds on nature, but also just the idea that the more we're opening ourselves up to grace, the more that God can kind of use us and the Holy Spirit can guide us.
Right.
And so what's wonderful about the charism of Pure in Heart is that it really encourages young people to have an active life of faith. And so many of us, you know, we go to daily mass, we're saying rosary daily, and we're really encouraging one another in, you know, the struggle, but also the joy of striving for holiness, you know, and the more purity that we have in our heart through allowing Christ in our heart, through allowing the Trinity to indwell in it. And that's one of my favorite biblical passages, scriptural passages, is that, you know, when we invite the Father to live in our heart, you know, and the Son and the Holy Spirit, that they will come and dwell within us.
Right.
And then when the Trinity is indwelling our heart, and the more that you love someone, the more that you invest, you know, if it's investing in God,
Right.
the more you are able to receive, the more room that you make for Him, the more you're able to receive Him, and then the more in turn you're able to give to those around us. So
you're going into mostly Catholic schools, but still, young people are infected by the culture we live in. Purity is thought of to be prudish or antiquated. How do you sell this? Do they believe it? Do they grab a hold of it, or?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think there has to be, at least when we go through training with our speakers, we talk about what it means to actually deliver an authentic message, you know, of joy and love and mercy. I mean, through chastity, or through, you know, the faith and media talk, or through the sanctity of life. And a huge piece of that is by sharing our own testimony and our witness. I mean, to show to them, you know, the struggles and actually having an understanding of what it means to be a young person, and the different pressures that society or family or friends, you know, may kind of put in one's direction. And I mean, our hope is that we can, you know, go into these programs and to be able to equip these students. I mean, our theme, or our kind of like our go-to statement, is to educate, empower, and inspire.
Right.
And so, I mean, how can we do that for these students, and how can we do that for each other?
Yeah. And what is their response? Do they grab a hold of the message, or?
It's a mixed bag, and I think that's just the honest truth. I remember I was speaking maybe in front of about 150 or so students, and giving the chastity talk, and one of my questions that I, you know, had asked them in a small group discussion was, you know, I guess, do you understand this? Like, do you buy this? Does this make sense to you? And, you know, for 3/4 of that group, it was maybe a group of like 10 of us, said, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. But there were a couple who said, you know, I kind of, you know, don't agree with that. And we just discussed. And I mean, it's just, you know, in terms of when we come in there, the whole idea is to be able to just share as much of ourselves and of the truth as possible, and just, you know, pray that at least, God willing, like one person is touched by that. Just as Nicole had mentioned, you know, for her when she was young.
Right.
But
That's
for
good.
those, you know, for those who still have a difficulty with understanding, we do our best to open up a forum to discuss, like, what is it that you don't understand, or what is it that's missing, and we just discuss it.
Right.
And just the hope is, you know, maybe not at that point that they'll understand or come to know, but maybe down the line. But it's planting the seeds.
Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Pure in Heart, so don't go away. Back in a moment. Welcome back. We're talking with Nicole and Fernando about Pure in Heart ministry, I guess you'd say. Let's talk about, you have some good material on the problem of this duality view of man, that we're not, body and soul's not forming like a union, that somehow what I do with my body really doesn't matter. I'm still who I am interiorly. And this other stuff, what we're doing, doesn't. How do you get that point across, that body and soul are one? You know, it forms a composite. There's only one of us, right? What we do with our body matters. So you have to win that argument, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk it out. I mean, so just in what we talk about with our chastity presentation with these students, so I mean, the whole premise, the foundation of it is theology of the body. So, by being able to address, first and foremost, what love is, to be able to have that discussion, to talk about what it means to be pure in heart, to then go into, just the biblical foundations, if you will, of creation and the way that God had intended us as men and women. Why He created Adam, and then why He created Eve, and that how Adam doesn't make sense as a man without Eve,
Right.
His partner, and just
In fact, the two together image God.
Yes.
Yeah, not just singularly, but together too. And that there's something about the body and that union that reveals who God is.
Yes.
And probably more so than, we break it down even more for the students by discussing what it means to be both body and soul together. So we have a great example that we talk to our students about. So I say to them, if Nicole were to come up to me and smack me in the face, I'd say to her, or I wouldn't say to her, Nicole, why'd you hit my body? I would say to her, obviously, Nicole, why'd you hit me?
Yeah.
And what does that mean?
Can we see an example of that so we can really get a feel for what you're talking about
Sometimes in
here?
the talks, I punch him, but yeah.
She has quite a mighty punch, so watch out. But I mean, it's really important, I think, just visually to show that to the students. But then, from there, we talk about. We actually invite the students to come up, and Nicole and I, or whoever the speakers are, gives them an emotion to try to express. So say, for example, if I give one student express happiness or joy, and Nicole were to give another student express sadness, we have then the students try to guess what emotion that they're trying to express, and then we ask them, okay, well, I mean, this is the beauty and the grace of what our bodies do for us, in that they make what's invisible visible. Like, you do not know that a person is happy or sad without being able to see how their body is communicating that.
Right. Right.
And I mean, I think that really drives it home.
Yeah, and I think that's something too, because we talk about the resurrection of the body, not just the body, but the body and the soul. But something that really kind of strikes out when you do that too is sometimes I'll tell students that just as we can lie, with our words, we want to be truthful. We know the right thing is to say the truth, is to tell the truth. We also want to watch what our body is doing. Is our body truly communicating the truth?
Right.
And so in questions of chastity, are we communicating? Like, I give myself totally, completely, fully to you, unreservedly. Are we speaking about that, or in a sense, are we lying to ourselves and or to one another with our body, and just how if you tell someone like I love you, but then you're really hitting them or hating them, likewise with our body. If you are saying with your body, I give myself to you totally, and I love you, but your heart and your commitment and your energy is not there. It's not like that total self-gift. You're actually lying with your body. So it's something that can be interesting to
And
bring
you
up.
all you in particular, Nicole, make some good points about oxytocin and vasopressin. And I mean, this comes up in confession. When you talk to people, maybe they're living together, not married, and I say, it messes up your discernment, besides being a violation of the commandments. It's like this sexual part's overpowering the relationship where you're supposed to get to know each other. You're living by having sexual relations like that. You're living physically like you're committed to each other, but you might not be committed. You might not have made vows yet. Talk about some of those reactions in the body that happen.
Yeah, sure. And this is something that I feel like, when the church came out in the 1960s saying, teaching about sexuality, the church was correct in that, but we didn't always have everything scientifically necessarily proof-wise to back it up, whereas now we do. And what we know through oxytocin is that, it is released through contact. So whether, we shake hands with someone or give a hug or the politician kisses the baby, there's a reason for that. It's because it creates closeness and emotional, it creates a connection with the body, and in specifically with sexuality, it's very powerful, because when someone experiences like heightened emotion and sexuality or an orgasm, but also even when a woman gives birth and when she's breastfeeding, those are the principal times where oxytocin is released. And scientifically, that bonds you to your partner.
Right.
And what it does on a practical level is it makes you trust the person more, it makes you less critical, and of course it makes you want to repeat the experience with the dopamine, which is the pleasure-producing aspect of that. And this is something that's very factual, and I think should be in all curriculum, secular and non-secular curriculum, because it really makes sense.
Right.
And that's why, when people are together sexually and then they break up, that's why it hurts, and when you think about the young people, we can all understand that, to some extent, either personal knowledge or through knowledge of friends, and that is something that for young people, it causes a lot of, anxiety, a lot of depression, and a lot of psychological issues, because there is that bonding, because it's not just the body bonding, it's also the soul bonding, even though most people don't necessarily take that into consideration.
Right.
But even if you just approach it on a scientific level,
Right.
and then every once in a while I'll mention vasopressin too, which is more a male hormone, but that is something that's very intriguing, because
Which was thought not to exist. Until
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
but we never know, right? It's a whole different subject.
Maybe you may not know.
Yeah, I know, but yes. But that's very intriguing also. And again, we can all understand this, because we've all either lived through experiences ourselves or observed them,
Yeah.
whether it's in the confessional or not.
Plus-
And with the vasopressin being essentially that, almost like a responsibility hormone.
Yeah.
And so if you take a man and a woman who are together sexually, and if the man truly wants to commit to her and cherish her and to protect her, provide for her, whatever you might say, he wants to be responsible for her, that will make him ever closer to her. However, if he's doing these actions with the body, and it's almost like it kicks in, like, I need to take care of her, I need to protect her, provide for her, cherish her, and the man is not ready, that will make him almost flee. And so we can almost see this in our culture, in the more hookup culture, where oftentimes women will want to express their love for the man in this way, thinking like, oh, this will show him how much I love him, even in any kind of context, then being confused. So there can be a lot of confusion, but it's actually very scientific. It's not religious, it's not moral, it's not even ethical only. It's very scientific.
To me, it shows like the beauty of God's plan, that the conjugal relations is cementing, fostering this bond, this union together. So, as John Paul II said, it gives flesh to the vows. It fosters this union. So if you do that stuff first, this might not be a good match. This might not be a person you want to be united with. So,
and you can, because of the dopamine, there can be such pleasure produced, that sometimes we can get confused, and especially, young people can confuse that feeling of pleasure and that happiness that you were describing so well early, that temporary earthly happiness with love, with true love. And that can be very confusing, but it's not necessarily true love.
what is true love?
Well, the ultimate example of that is Jesus on the cross, right? And so, love is sacrifice. When we talk to the students about what authentic love looks like, and how when looking at various situations within their own lives of what could be love, we have 4 criteria. Is it total or free, total, faithful, fruitful? Excuse me. Is it free, total, faithful, fruitful? So just really having them think about, for example, with free, are both individuals, freely choosing of each other? Do they feel like they're able to freely be together? Are they able to totally give themselves to each other within a situation? Are they faithful? And then, just kind of out of that, is there fruitfulness that comes out of that?
Yeah.
And this type of criteria isn't just, subjected to a relationship like a boyfriend-girlfriend or husband-wife, but also just with your friendships. Something we try to accentuate is, fruitfulness within a relationship is the ability to continually help bring out the best version of each other.
And to want the best for one another,
Yeah.
kind of in the Italian way of saying I love you, like I want the best
Right,
for you.
to will the
and
good for
to
the
will
other.
the good
Yes.
to will the good of the other.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to that. And I think it's something that when we're truly honest with ourselves and with others, is there any kind of manipulation involved? Is there any giving in order to get? Because we all have legitimate needs, but are we
Using the other person.
are we in any way? And that can be very, very subtle, especially for young people, because sometimes if there's a little bit of a lack of true love in the family, or maybe a lack of good friendships and quality of friendships, and most of all, a lack of that personal relationship with God, where you know that you are a beloved son and you're a beloved daughter of God the Father, who has good plans for you. And if you don't have that, we can tend to try to seek that in someone else, and it could be anything, even insecurity that could push people towards.
And that leads us to, I think, to the discussion of pornography. That's part of your talks as well. It's such a problem today, epidemic proportions. And one of the solutions to that is to realize our identity, child of God, that we're not going to use other people, not going to objectify other people, going to look at them hopefully with purity of heart, the eyes of God, and to find our identity so we're not escaping into whatever, pornography, hedonism, pleasure. It might be workaholism, it might be status or accumulation of whatever. But that identity, being a child of God, that's a hard thing for us to get. Tell us about that, Fernando. How do you get that? How do you believe that?
Oh, gee.
Because our culture is preaching that to us.
Yes. I think just, again, from being involved in college ministry, and having the opportunity to be able to listen to people's stories and witnesses. There is this sense of, who am I? I think that's probably, if you were to have a question that's plaguing like every single person within our society, I think that pretty much sums it up to, who are we? Like in the context of our friendships, who am I just with myself? Who am I, with my friends and my loved ones? And how do I live to that? I just know, for my own self, that being a continuous struggle and continuous battle with the sense of identity and like grabbing all these different things of what society is presenting me as to how I should be living my life. Am I like the best student, or am I the top athlete, or what have you?
Yeah.
But we grab on and we latch on to these things when what we should be focusing on is first and foremost what has been given to us by the moment of our conception, in that we are a son and daughter of God first. We are not an athlete first. We're not the best student first, but we're God's child first and foremost. And given that realization, it's then where do I take that? Like how do I live that out? And hopefully what we try to deliver within our young adult groups and also too just within our talks is the beauty and the gifts of the sacraments, and really enforcing that. To be able to try to receive as frequent as possible the Holy Communion, or to go to confession.
And I think so key to it as well, we realize we're children in a Father's house, to surrender to His providence, to surrender to His will, to His guidance in our life. That no, I don't have to have all this stuff in order to be whole, to be authentic or whatever. I have to have this relationship with God first. And because I think what drives us into the pornography, the overeating, the alcoholism, whatever addiction, is that pain of that misfit with our Creator. If we can really foster that and get in contact with Him, He can do these powerful things in us to free us, to give us grace. So I just commend you on that message. That's a tough one, I think, for us.
Well, it just even like with my own faith journey, it's not perfect. Part of like you had said, our talk is on pornography, which is such a huge topic, and at least many of my peers don't necessarily see an issue or a problem with that, but it's certainly something that I had personally struggled with, something that I know my brother had struggled with. Just many friends too had struggled with pornography, and to be able to, there came a point where I had to say, I just need to stop because, all this time that I'm investing in this, all the oxytocin. So part of what we say with our students is, this oxytocin is being released, and you're creating this relationship with this image, and there's that utility aspect, right?
There's no one there.
There's no one there. Exactly, and it's just it becomes such a waste of time where you could just use that time for so many other productive things and more fruitful things than self-pleasure. But something that you had said, Nicole, when we were talking about this earlier, that I found really cool is, well, what are the different ways that we can break? Whether it's pornography or whether it's various habits. For example, if you are a chronic Facebook user, so it's like not only just on your computer at work, but like maybe or computer at school, but your phone. So what can I do? Obviously, with God's grace and a prayer, what can I do to help train my mind to avoid this inclination to do X.
Right.
So whether it's Facebook, whether it's porn, or whether it's something else that's kind of keeping you away from something that you're supposed to be doing, in actuality, like the example you had said with being able to check your clock. So if I have this inclination to go on Facebook, a more productive way is to just check the time and then settle through that moment and then get back to work.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't necessarily with a clock example, but for me, it's to be able to actually turn it into a prayer. So if I'm experiencing a temptation of some sort, and just to be real, with the struggles and temptations as a man, just visually, if I'm being stimulated in that way, and it's not charitable, to that person, and if I'm not thinking about that person in the best way possible, then I take a moment and I say, God, like, thank you so much for the beauty of this person, but help me out, and just taking that moment.
I thought that was good practical advice, like you're out in the world or something, and you find yourself staring and you're struggling with chastity. Yeah, look at your watch or something, do something to kind of break that trance or whatever you're in, and to say a prayer for the person, to pray for them. And I think those are good pointers. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back, and they also do some work with the United Nations. So these guys are evangelizing. So you want to hear their story. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back, and Douglas has a question for us.
I've been listening to this entire conversation so far, and I have to say that it sounds like a lot of what you're saying is that a lot of our young people, especially generations today, just have never been exposed to, never had a formation or a shaping, a training in real love, meaning godly love, expressed through a wholesome family. I think of a book Peter Kreeft wrote years ago, saying that in 1955 the divorce rate in America was 10%. By 1995 the divorce rate had gone to 50%. I was in New Mexico and a priest told me down there several years ago, that the divorce rate at his diocese is 75%. So the family structure alone has been eroding and collapsing in many respects, and it's been a real battle zone. And so a lot of our young people today, my age on down, and I'm still in my 20s or so, but a lot of our young people today have never had the exposure to authentic, true, godly love expressed in a wholesome family or in a wholesome relationship. You mentioned hookup culture. That's very, very common, isn't it? College campuses, high school campuses, just the whole hookup culture idea. So when you have a chance to expose them and express to them the idea and the truth of prayer, of sacramental life, of sacramental healing, and so forth, don't you see something light up inside of them, that all of this that they've been filling their bellies with, the junk food of life and of relationships and love and sexual encounters, is put in its place when all of a sudden, before the Blessed Sacrament and adoration or praying a rosary, being led and formed in that, do you notice that there is a transformation that starts to take place at least? A light bulb goes on maybe, or?
Yes.
Oh, definitely. But not just with the
Yeah, what are
not
you going to
just
say
with
to
the
that one? No,
teenagers.
that doesn't
you know?
sound good.
Yeah.
Sacraments, no. No, but yeah, go ahead. You were saying,
Yeah.
Nicole?
Well, not just with the teenagers, but with the young people who meet at Pure in Heart, you know, and we have so many wonderful people who come, but who have, you know, been, I use this word carefully, but to some extent victims of the sexual revolution and what the fruit of that, you know, and it's been so beautiful to see how the sacraments have changed that. Like I've just been in awe of just seeing the beauty of Christ coming and living more and more in all of these people who are now like, giving witness talks. And so it doesn't matter what their past was, you know, be it promiscuity, be it marriage and divorce, be it whatever it might be, but to have that, to come to the healing waters, you know, and to be continually healed. And that is so profound. And to see a transformation like that you went, that's truly supernatural and that comes from the renewing of our minds, but also just opening ourselves up to the sacraments. And one of the key ways I honestly think of that is the renewing of our minds with regards to how we view love and sexuality, because that's one of the key parts to the divorce culture and to the culture of sex trafficking and pornography and promiscuity is that disassociation. And so when you have that mentality that accepts contraception, that wants the pleasure without any possibility of openness to life, you see the fruit of that. The fruit is a culture of death. And so one way to speak life into that culture, you know, is to ask God to come into all the places in our hearts, all the places in our hearts that are wounded, you know, and whether it be through betrayal or through rejection or through promiscuity or through family issues such as divorce or just unhealthy relating in the family.
Well, you know, you mentioned
So-
the idea of some sort of, you know, sexual abuse in some way, shape, or form. And I mean,
Yes.
our generations of late have all been in some way, even emotionally, psychologically. You can't walk through the checkout line at a grocery store without seeing something that abuses sexuality with the images on magazine covers. There's a level of abuse in some way that abuses the true dignity of the body, the true dignity of the gift of man and woman's giving to one another. And this is rampant. So if that's all we're formed and shaped in, and we don't fight back, we don't engage in that spiritual battle, that emotional, psychological battle to help win souls and bring them over, we got to storm the gates that of hell that are keeping people oppressed and in prison. And we do this with bringing the light of Christ. We melt the gates down with the laser beams of God's grace. You know, like Superman in the eyes. Or, okay, maybe not like that, but you get the point.
But it's true because what the enemy's tactic is to enter in and especially attack the innocence of children and the purity of children. And so you'll see that in our educational system through comprehensive sexuality education programs that promote themselves as being comprehensive. But in reality are starting as young as age 4 and 5 to promote masturbation or to have very, you know, almost offensive and unscientific ways of viewing the human person.
Well,
and it's an anthropological view of the human person also.
And now we're to the level of dealing with, you know, homosexual formation and training at young grades as becoming part of curriculum. And we're seeing, you know, even gender fluidity issues and gender changes. And all this is being promoted and embraced. And I think you said one time, Father, that this idea of the homosexual agenda and the gender neutrality sort of stuff, they don't just want us to accept it, they want us to bow down to it. You said this months ago, that this is something we're seeing more and more. That also raises the stakes in this battle for us to evangelize the truth and bring the light. And you mentioned during the break, you know, something, Nicole, about the need for healing. You know, since we're in the last segment, I mean, you want to talk a little bit about the need, if either of you can address that, because
Sure,
without the
I
healing
think
of Father,
it's so-
you said it so well at the beginning, is the confusion we have with who we are, relationship with God, the Father, does lead us to go seek comfort and consolation in the things of the world, especially the high pleasure senses things of the world, drugs, alcohol, sex, and so forth, pornography and all. Healing, though.
And in this year of mercy. I think that's vital. You know, when we look at St. Faustina and the Jesus I Trust in You image of his blood and water being poured out in this year of mercy, you know, where there's so many opportunities for healing through confession. And also to take responsibility for our healing, you know, so it's not our fault if we've been sexually abused or molested, or even if because of our culture, you know, vocations are delayed, and there's a lot of there's a lot of healing that needs to happen in individuals before there can be holy vocations. But we are responsible for actively pursuing our healing, you know, and Jesus is our healer, and he wants to heal us, and he really truly is the answer. And when we approach the Mass as, you know, it's just a wellspring of healing, and the sacraments of a wellspring of healing, but also to go to therapy if we need to talk about these issues to well-trusted friends. And I think that we have a responsibility for that too.
Well, you know, and just again, I think the biggest issue, and from my experience with teaching confirmation students and talking to students, is that issue of how do you know what I'm going through, or like how can you relate? I mean, how do you stand up there teaching all these things and making it sound so wonderful and beautiful when clearly, like within my own life, it hasn't been like that. And basically, it's how do I take my own witness, my own struggles, and be able to authentically share that in a very loving way. I mean, honestly, I think what the beauty of having witness talks, you know, on retreats or just across the board, whatever, you know, wherever the witness talk is being presented, is, you know, that relationship or that relation to Jesus on the cross, and that I'm going to bear myself wholly and completely, and to share with you the ways that God has really transformed my own life. And my hope is that you can learn from my own witness and my story. And so, you know, probably like one of my biggest pieces, well, at least that I find very relatable to many of my students, is, well, my parents had divorced in, you know, this past December, and so being able to talk with them about that and the struggles that I personally have experienced, and, you know, hopefully that they've experienced, to talk about that. But then also too, just, I mean, within my own struggles with same-sex attraction, and, you know, that ability to share kind of my own personal insight and the ways that God has clearly shown, you know, his providence and his provision within, you know, some of the darkest moments of my life. And the witness, you know, to be able to witness the fruits of that, you know, whether it be other members of the community, you know, wherever I'm sharing my witness to, come up, be able to talk about their own struggles, like currently where they're at right now, and their current struggle, or, you know, the ways that God has clearly provided for them. And, you know, it's just, again, you know, the hope is that when we train our speakers, it's you know, you definitely obviously don't want to sugarcoat, because I think students can obviously see past that, but it's being able to truly present through love and mercy in the same way that we've experienced the love and mercy that God continuously gives us every day.
That is a path for healing, to share. We've all been damaged by the sexual revolution, to share how we've come out of that ourselves, and God will bring up those places to do that in an appropriate way. We got to hit the UN stuff. Give us a quick structure of what you all do at the UN.
Well, it's a beautiful apostolate that that the leadership prior to myself, Nicole, was actually part of that process. In that last August, we were just granted NGO status, which basically allows us to participate in big UN conferences that are open to NGOs in New York, Geneva, Brussels, to be able to participate on the international forum, to engage with people, I guess in our particular case, on the sanctity of life and of chastity. One of the the first conference that we had attended as the first official Pure in Heart NGO group at the UN was at the Commission on the Status of Women, where we had the opportunity to sit in on multiple discussions on comprehensive sexual education, and to be able to sit in and share our perspective, I mean, to share the good news and the truth of the gospel and love and mercy that comes from that.
That is so great. You're NGO along with Planned Parenthood, but you get to have your say, and they say their part. But that's just great. There's a place at the table for a Christian view.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience doing that.
Well, it has been very positive, because you know, when you're there, a lot of things in the international forum, they are related to money and to actual, like, the policy making and to the practicality of how things are taught. And so Planned Parenthood is there often, and they will do a lot of side events. So sometimes there's an opportunity for Q&A afterwards. And so to just be able to witness a little bit to that, and to present a different viewpoint, and also to present a different witness, to say that, you know, as a young, educated professional, and that this is not the worldview that I espouse, and these are the reasons why I'm not going for them, and in a very scientific, social science kind of way, but to really bring that to the forum in a way where people can listen. And so that's just powerful, and also to bring your presence in.
Yeah.
in
yeah.
there.
And you
And
actually witnessed to other NGO people, right, to the Planned Parenthood.
Yeah,
Yes,
and probably one,
yes.
of the biggest issues that we had discovered going into the UN, I guess, talks, if you will, is that there is complete enmity between the pro-choice side and the pro-life side, and there's nothing in terms of healing or reconciliation or bridge talk discussions to be able to truly understand where we're each coming from. Because on the one hand, we're in these conference rooms and everyone's trying to get across their points so that they could be heard and what have you, but there's no actual let's sit down and talk. And probably one of the most profound experiences for me was the ability to be able to sit down next to someone who came from Eastern Europe, who was working for Planned Parenthood and an organizer out there, and for me to be able to listen to her own story, and for her to be able to ask me questions about the Catholic Church, and to be able to share the truth. Versus what she, had known. And something that, I definitely want to emphasize and share is we're in the process right now of preparing for the next
about 30
talk.
seconds.
The next talk,
15.
or sorry, the next mission, which is this coming March. So please pray for us.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's great to have you on
Thank
the
you.
show.
God bless you.
And may our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you and give you His peace. And may Almighty God bless you, Father, Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. We'll see you next week on Life on the Rock.